What's mine? Life here is divided up like this. There are sheep who do not know that they are sheep, and they lay claim to abilities that are impossible for sheep. Then there are a few who know that man is a sheep, and by so realizing are able to do things normally denied a sheep. And might I add that this would sound insane to the first category of sheep. A curio? No. Men do not blame others for how they think, nor do they blame others for how they look. Men only blame others for how they emotionally feel. Curious, no? Dermatological update. The most recent findings and statistical evidence coming from a major Northwestern University School of Medicine supports a hypothesis that says that proper diagnosis and treatment of a variety of skin rashes is severely limited if it is not first recognized when such outbreaks have a strictly internal cause. No matter how enlightening, there is little interest in diagnoses that are too revealing or in prescriptions that are too explicit and workable. There was once a land in which the sounds of drums were constantly heard. In fact, the sounds of 3 different drums, although the natives seemed to make no distinction between them. Emotions are latent energy within you, not potential suffering just waiting to be set off by some external event. There is no greater backdrop or fertile soil you can have than a lack of hostility and irritation. In such a blessed condition do your eyes open in a way wondrous and revealing. Just as it would do an ordinary person no good were they made aware that men live in total captivity, if for instance that was true, likewise such an awareness will not benefit one on the quest unless they proceed right along and act otherwise. There are different levels of reality. There is the perception of one which is by birth naturally given to man. Then there is another which is only known through one's own efforts. All notions of growth are illusion there unless it is at the expense of that which is natural to man. A sane man cannot deceive himself about what he is physically, nor can he ultimately do so regarding matters mental to him. But when it comes to his emotions, the field is wide open and singularly fertile for unchecked self-deception. From one view, in fact, routine emotions can be seen as nothing but experiences of a misleading and dishonest nature. What else can you validly conclude regarding activity within an organism which is so intent on keeping its objectives and the dynamics of its operations hidden from its host? It's easy to be ignorant when you're kept in the dark, but it's possible to see if you but only try. While man is the only creature with the ability to know, he yet has always felt that something was being kept from him. There was once an operation that ran at a certain tempo. In fact, 3 different tempos ran within the operation, although observers of the operation never seemed to have noticed. Though man remains an incompleted work, if you think that you are completed, then you are, and nothing, no change is possible. You're left with attempting to treat a frog for perceived ills. Many ordinary men have long proclaimed an admirable goal to be to love their fellow man, quickly followed by the admission that they do not know how to go about it, with none ever seeing that a solid way to begin would be to not think about your fellow man. Only fools predict the future, and 2 classes of fools are possible. Those who do not know what the future is and predict it are fools, and those who do know, if they were to publicly predict it, would likewise be fools. Doesn't the fact that plain, sane, ordinary, everyday people have trouble expressing exactly how they feel suggest to you that how people feel is a much more complex subject than is normally thought? Well, Either that, or else their whole concept of what feelings are is askew. And rather than end this up by saying, think about it, perhaps I should suggest doing something else about it. Now, I wonder what it could be. To ever get anywhere with this, you must have all the makings of an ordinary person, even if you don't display them all of the time. Thought that one would go over. There was once a belief system that believed a specific thing. In fact, within the specific thing, it simultaneously believed three other things, although none who experienced it ever seemed aware of it. It hurts to grow because it is painful to change. And a man's greatest pain is in the process of growth comes from him having to change his relationship to his experience of emotions. All hostility and criticism are forms of self-deception. There was once a reality which was a full statement of what was. In fact, within its full statement of what was were three additional statements, although those living in this reality appeared oblivious to them. Though it may not be totally possible, a man can attempt to be objective about both how he looks and what he thinks. So what stops you from at least attempting same regarding your emotions? If ordinary men did have the possibility of individual growth, then one of the greatest obstacles in their way would be their belief that which they normally experience is natural and that there is nothing further to be said or done about it. At a certain level, offering praise to a man for his ability is to potentially diminish his ability. Faced with such imponderables, one man says, my motto is, have no motto, and go from there. For those in search of the truth about life, there is something worse than experiencing incidents which cause emotional suffering, and that is to live a life of too little passion. There is no need to try and walk a fine line between the two. Simply accept what comes and use it to your own ends. What else have you got? What else can you profitably do? There was once a man who was a complete living embodiment of himself. In fact, in addition to being himself, he was also three other people. Although as long as he simply stayed himself, he remained ignorant of their presence. Those who can be awakened are those playing outside who can be called into dinner. Dr. Blunt's unadorned diagnosis. If you stay concerned about the illnesses of others, you can never, may I repeat that, never get well yourself. While emotions are energy, those which life routinely runs through a man drain him, not energize him. Compared to thinking and physical activity, emotions are the only experiences in a man's life about which, if he asks, have they been of benefit to me or have they cost me? The answer is, to say the least, uncertain. A real warrior is never defeated by death, nor defeated by aging, illness, or other circumstances. A real warrior is only defeated by giving up. One man's recent musing: it is easier not to deceive yourself if you do not talk about yourself. He mused a bit more than added, and easier still if you do not think about yourself. If life alive is like a gigantic, ceaseless storm, then within it are many smaller storms. And part of the quest is in establishing a calm within the storms that seem to be yourself. Someone once asked a man who knew, why do I prefer to hear that certain activity called the quest rather than the struggle? And the one who knew said, why do you like to hear it called anything? Now, there is a question with potential. And lastly, Guy says he doesn't believe it much matters what you think or feel, that your body is going to go ahead and live the life for you that you would have lived anyway. And that the only thing thinking and emotions do is upset you. The truer they are, the harsher they sound. Consider one of the news items that was mentioned, that man is the only creature readily observable, but the only creature on this planet that was given the ability to know things. And yet, as far back as there's any history, as far back as you can remember in your history, he has always felt that something was being kept from him. That something of importance enough that it runs through all of his history, his records, his literature, religion, the belief that there is something being hidden from him. And rather than dealing with it in any direct manner, which wouldn't have gotten him anywhere, but rather than deal with it in that manner, as always, the most basic weapon in man's repertoire that's given to him is for him to look somewhere else, to look off. And he has looked off about this feeling of something being hidden. And let me reinforce this for a second. This is not just some strange theory or some metaphor I'm coming up with. You can feel it in yourself. And as I said, it is the central core inside of all religion, fables, mythology, man's literature, that which is considered of historical significance, the great literatures that survive. The core in it, if you just think back, everything from Shakespeare to fairy tales to the Iliad and the Odyssey, it is all wrapped around a core of there being something hidden from man. Of course, at the most childish levels, it comes out something hidden like the golden fleece or the Holy Grail. But it's just a step a little above that. I don't mean to limit it to that, because even in ordinary history and literature, it also reaches a non-physical level. But rather than face it in any direct manner and and people inquire as to what is this? How does this come? What is this in me? What could it be? Rather than any direct investigation of it, it has fallen into areas in which man has looked away from the question itself and attempted to supply immediate answers to it. And you just look off, and the more you look off toward the imagined answers are the ones that you supply yourself just through the conservation of energy. The finite length of time a man has, the more time you spend, the more energy you spend looking off at these supposed, alleged, assumed, theoretical answers, then the less time and energy you have that you might have to look back at the problem itself. So man has come up with ideas ranging all the way from him having a subconscious mind and all of its many motivating factors and energies to the ideas of demons, in the full sense of demons, of there being spirits afoot in the world, even gods themselves who go out of hand, but they inhabit not just the inner world of the planet, not the subterranean world, but in some way that the gods, when they run amok, or evil spirits get within man and cause him to do things that are not to his benefit, or to at least do things that when asked, the motivation, he has none. He has no answer. That has been, probably in the religious areas, probably been the most common. That, back to where we started now, that men, all sane, ordinary men, feel that there is something of importance, whether they go around speaking this way or not. Their actions, their literature, their thinking, their writing, evidences what I'm saying, even though they may not say it. But there is this feeling that something is being hidden from man, that something is being kept from him of such importance, of some importance. They don't know what, but it does not go away. It does not go away from generation to generation. And so rather than look at it directly, probably the oldest, obviously the most common, is in the general area of religion, that man is some sort of battlefield on which are being played out struggles by invisible forces. And that therefore, if they're invisible, and if the evil force is winning, then it would make a man do things that he does not know why he does it. And therefore, that explanation is intended to serve as some sort of makeshift answer as to why do I feel like things are being hidden from me. It's because things are going on over which you have no control. They're completely beyond man, of a supernatural nature, and you cannot know them. Inference being that's better not to know them. Psychology would have it that the feelings of things being hidden is well-founded, that there is in fact and they would say a psychological base, and they would attempt to use that as near close as you'd put up with it as being synonymous with a scientific basis. Keep in mind, by the way, this has not changed the fact that all of man's dissatisfaction arises from the fact that he is an incompleted work. And once you see that, all the rest of this is just talking around the subject. It's talking about specific local examples rather than just the universal. Because as long as man is an unfinished, incomplete work of art, then he always feels as though something is hidden. Once you see it, there's nothing else to say. That is the core, that is the real basis of it. But from that springs these other ideas that there's something being hidden. And religion and some of its metaphysical offshoots, then this hidden, of course, springs into ideas of there being secret knowledge, secret book, secret information somewhere, that did a man have it, it would absolve him of this feeling that something is being hidden, that it is a specific something. Psychology would say that this comes about due to the fact that we do not only have a conscious mind, that we have a subconscious mind that has stored all sorts of forgotten information, and that therefore we have a quite legitimate right to feel as though something is being hidden. But their idea of something being hidden is that it has been hidden in your lifetime, that what is being hidden is based upon your own personal experience. Religion and psychology both attempt to address the question of why do men act in ways that are inexplicable. Why do men act in ways that by their own admission after the fact were detrimental to them? And rather than look at that question as perhaps Dr. Blunt would, did he have public office hours and engage in public activities, but rather than look at it directly, they again go back. They refer to, religion does, evil forces, nefarious motivations over which a man has no control, that he is simply a helpless pawn, and therefore the devil will make you do things that you would never do were you living a Christian life, for instance. Psychology says that certainly people do things that are detrimental without any question by their own admission. And the only explanation is because they would certainly not willfully do it. They do not consciously engage in activity that they know to be harmful or at least wasteful. They would not consciously do it. And so the only explanation is that something subconsciously is making them do it. All of this still leaves you in that general pond that I've described of taking man instead of being a tadpole is to take him to be a frog, to assume that he is already completed. And if you take him to be a frog, then the only thing you can do is treat the frog for the perceived ills it has, such as engaging in anti-frog behavior, engaging in behavior that by no means can be considered to be salubrious to a frog. And so the only way they can explain it is that the frog is fully grown, he is completed, and so therefore if he is acting in ways that seem flawed compared to a properly behaving frog, then all we can do is cure the flaw or attempt to treat the flaw. If you take man to be a frog, if you take man to be completed, and that such things as his feeling that something is being hidden is not based upon the fact that he is an incompleted work, and that what is being hidden arises from the fact that he is yet to be finished. He is still in a state of flux, in a state of growth. If you do not see that, then you have no alternative. The only thing you can do is attempt to treat him, because you now take him as an adult, not a child. He has to go from the hands of a pediatrician into the hands of a general practitioner, and you have to treat him for adult, irreversible changes. You cannot try to do something, treat him in a way that you might a child when they apparently were more open to remedial efforts. All you can do is attempt to treat this frog for perceived flaws. As long as any part of a man remains hidden to him, you will always look off. You can never be conscious in the moment. And just put bluntly, as long as you take man to be a finished work, it finally must strike you. No change is possible. You are left with attempting to treat a frog for simply perceived ills. If you think you're complete, even though man is an incompleted piece of work, if you think you're complete, you are. It's just one of the joys, one of the dazzling effects that you can appreciate as a human without having to visit your local carnival. That even though man is an incompleted work, if you think that you're completed, then you are. I mean, you must see that. It's not a psychological trick, although it fits into what psychology would accept as being the observable scientific dynamics and the art of psychology and their interpretation of man's psyche. Well, yeah, if anybody thinks something enough, they can delude themselves. I'm not talking about delusion. I'm not talking about a pathological condition. I'm talking about all sane people. When I say, even though humans are an incompleted work, if you think you're completed, you are. I'm not speaking of some pathological state. I'm speaking of the ordinary, everyday state. Because to be sane, you must believe that you are a finished work of art, a finished piece of work. That certainly does not belie the fact that sane, ordinary people will, if questioned at all. That's one of the characteristics of sanity, as I've noted for you, is to admit that you're not perfect. And so ordinary people, they take themselves to be a completed work. But if you ask it all, like, completed, you mean like you're just perfect? Oh, well, certainly I'm not perfect. I mean, there are many rough edges and many flaws that I have that I would love to work on. I am working on them. I am attempting to cure them, attempting to treat them. I am working on them. It is not that they're insincere, and it's not that they're stupid. Okay, well, it's not that they're insincere. Being precise doesn't cost any more than just letting your lips kind of wander off your face and the subject. It is not that people are insincere when they say they're working on their flaws. But I ask you one more time, at least rhetorically, can you see that beyond my metaphors of frogs and tadpoles, beyond any metaphor or symbolism, is a fact that if you take you to be a finished work, that you are as grown as you can be. And we're not commenting on your qualities, but that if you take yourself as being finished, yes, I'm grown, that's it. Now I've got to get, since I am not only grown, I am a curious grown person. I am a civilized grown person. I am an insightful, reflective grown person. And so now, I do not take myself just as I am. When I say that I'm grown, I see my flaws. I can enumerate several of them for you, and I am concerned about them. I work on them. We are not questioning ordinary men's sincerity, because they cannot be insincere and be ordinary. But do you see that if you take yourself as a finished product with flaws, but if you take yourself as a finished product, you cannot change. You can work on it, but to begin with, you're not even working on anything that is real, the flaws that people say. When an ordinary man, and again I repeat, this is not a statement or diagnosis of man as being a pathological liar, but ordinary sane people take themselves non-analytically, they take themselves to be a finished work. There's nothing to indicate otherwise. There's no theory, there's no common philosophy, there's no conventional thinking. You never hear of it. No one ever says that man is not a finished work. They can say things that apparently have a certain lean in other direction. People will say, well, some of us, or hopefully a large percentage of the humanity is in a state of evolution, but they look upon the evolution as being social. Well, that's all they can observe. They can say, well, we seem to be more civilized, we're more humane in our doings with one another, by and large, than we were 500 years ago, 2,000 years ago. And so they will say that man is very likely in a state, parts of humanity, are in a state of social development. But there is nothing to lead ordinary people. It's just outside the mainstream of collective thought. It is outside the mainstream of the thinking that life instills and runs through men for them to think of themselves as a whole, to think of all of humanity as being a creature that is literally incompleted. Without that, then any complaint you have that they operate in ways that I do not approve of, which is still based upon, whether you see it or not, upon the feeling that something is being hidden, which I'll try to tie together in a second. But as long as you take yourself as being a completed work, then the only thing you can do to try and change, the only thing you can do to try and improve yourself is to improve upon what you are, which is a distinction I keep trying to draw between treatments and actual effort. Treatments are futile. Certainly a man, if he finds fault with his drinking, if external conditions are such to arouse the proper passion in him, he can stop drinking. It is possible. We all know that. It does not change his consciousness. It does not change what he is. He is still what he is. He is just now what he is in a sober state, in a sober condition. But he is still what he is. And what he was is still as hidden to him as it was. But along any lines, I just picked out an obvious one that apparently people do make changes. But it cannot change what you are, because if you accept that what you are is what you are, if you believe that you are a completed product, and I repeat again, no one goes around thinking that way or otherwise. It's just you must see within yourself, and you can see it everywhere. It's no secret at all. Humanity. The heart of humanity, the sane majority, everyday heart of humanity accepts. There's no question. The question never arises. They accept that they are a finished work, taking into account the stage of maturity, as they call it, that you become physically and apparently emotionally and socially grown by your late teens. But that once a person is an adult, you are a finished product. Now, after that comes a matter of remedial action, treatments, because all sane people say, I'm not perfect and I need to change. If you take yourself as being finished, then all you can do is attempt to treat the finished product, and it should be observable, demonstratively so to you internally at least, that mere treatments of a finished product will not change the product. You can say, well, I'm making it better. No, if you take it as finished, and there's not much further I can stay with this without saying like I'm becoming sophistic or just playing with words. But if you take yourself as being a finished product, that, well, here I am a full, right off the assembly line, there's nothing else they can do for me. Here I am, I'm a 1996 Oldsmobile. And you get away from the factory, and you say, but, by the way, I do have some dings. I had happened before I got out of the factory. I got some dings on my fender, the paint's a little fading on my top, and for what reason, my muffler's already loose. So I'm going to work on that. I take it very seriously. But you understand that even if apparently you can tighten up the muffler yourself and retouch the paint and etc., you have not changed. All you have done, and I'm being charitable to think up this metaphor, you're being charitable to say that you have improved, because all you have done is bring yourself up to where you should have been by your own, not by my definition, but by your own passion, by your own reaction to the circumstances in which you find yourself, the condition in which you find yourself. All you've done is bring it up to what you consider should have been the minimum. And an ordinary person would be lucky to, if you had 3 or 4 major dings or a weak paint or something that was loose, somebody left a bolt loose in the door, if you just had 2 or 3 of those, an ordinary man, as you should be aware, would be lucky if he made any headway on one of those over a period of 50 years. Before he died, if he could say, I am very close to finding out where that rattle is. I've got it tracked down to the left front door. I'm almost positive. Literally. That's a good lifetime's work. But you understand, even should he find it, then right quick, should he knock out the dings in his fender, should he touch up the faded paint on his top, all he would be on his deathbed after accomplishing these 3 great undertakings to treat himself, to cure himself of his flaws, by his own passion, by his own belief, all he would be then is what he should have been 50 years ago when he rolled off the assembly line. That doesn't prove anything, although you may have found it an interesting allegory for a moment. It is just still a fact that treatment and change are 2 different things. That even if treatment of a frog apparently works, you're still a frog. Which wasn't a frog to start with, it's an illusion, but now you think, well, at least I'm a better illusionary frog. The only way that change is possible is for a man to have his own understanding without my words, and there's no theory that you can, no words that you can adopt. So yes, I believe that. It sounds right and it's interesting, so I adopt it. That won't help. You must see it yourself. You can feel it. I mean, that's the heart of why you're interested in such as this, those who are. You can feel it in you that the problem is not curing something, not treating something, but you realize I am unfinished. And to call anything in you now flawed, to call anything in you a personal problem, it's misleading. Because I repeat, all that does is help reinforce the notion that you are a completed product with dings and faded paint and a rattle somewhere. It is only when you can see yourself for yourself on your own and you see that I am incomplete, no matter how old you are, that humanity is an incomplete piece of work. That's the only time any change is possible. Anything else people can call, they can say, well, I'm working on change. I'm attending AA meetings. I'm doing whatever they're doing. I'm attempting to do this or that. And they are as sincere as they can be, but it's going nowhere. Because you cannot change. I mean, it's damn near impossible to change the least little bit in what you are anyway. But that offers no promise. So, if you can hold that in mind, I refer one more time before we press on, that is the basis of the feeling that men have something that's being hidden from them. I attempt to change, I attempt to improve myself, and it seems to go nowhere. I seem like I make several steps forward in my attempts to better myself, and within a week I've made 4 back. It just seems futile. It just seems like I'm running on an endless treadmill. I can't seem to get anywhere. There's something lacking. I've consulted the best psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors. I talk to people. Something's missing. That's the basis of it. That what's missing is their realization that they are not a frog. They are not a completed work. They're an incompleted work. To actually change, for there to be any possibility that a man can do anything toward reaching some other state of knowledge, some other state of consciousness, and then indirectly, which is not much of a selling point, but perhaps even have some effect on what you are, assuming the change of consciousness and what you are do not simultaneously and mutually affect one another. I don't think I care to comment on that. In fact, forget I even said that. You cannot, now remember, we're past the treatment. We'll say that you're involved with some sort of extraordinary activity. And the basis of it you finally understand is some experience wherein your consciousness is changed to such a degree that what you are does not keep you, does no longer hinder you from seeing life in a way that is absolutely astounding. That is, to see what's going on. And once you understand that there are such states, once you even hear and can hear enough yourself about it, and you realize, well, I've even been closer to it. And no particular significance, but you can recognize that throughout history there are traces, historical traces of people, whether they realize it or not, are describing moments wherein they were actually in a state that was more conscious and revealing than their normal one, and their normal one may have been at the front ranks of their time, of their contemporaneous times, intelligence and knowledge, sophistication. But once you have an idea, once you have an idea that there is such a condition, such a state, such an experience, and then you hear it pointed out that people do not normally live consistently, constantly in that state. And that if you're not in that state and you're interested in it, whether you've been there or not, or whether you never have, whether you've never had the experience, if you're not in it right this second, there's only one thing to do. Only one. And that's try to be conscious in this moment. So let's assume that you get that far, and after many hours, weeks, months, years, months, minutes, seconds, hours, months, days, months and a half put together, it seems to accumulate. And after knowing this, after knowing the idea for many months, hours, seconds, months, hours, years, one day it strikes you that by God it's true, which means that you now personally understand it. Then, the problem, then everything is narrowed down in life. You only have one problem. You're still trying to achieve the state every time possible, or for the first time if you've never had it. And as long as you're not there, and if you have your own understanding of the fact that the only thing that you can do right this second is not pray, not meditate, not fast, not wait for help, not solicit help, not go anywhere in particular, not do anything in particular, all you can do is internally, right this second, try to be conscious that you're here. Which gives within itself, to those wired up, born to do it, no one else, it gives them, again, it may take you doing it once, 10 times, 40 million times, maybe 27, maybe 1,600 and something or other, or maybe 7. Or it may take 1 billion, but it may take only 3,600 and something. The day will finally come that it seems as though all the little attempts you've done, again, accumulate, and they suddenly can expand far enough that you have the ability to hold it for 5 or 6 seconds, something extraordinary. And as I pointed out, once that happens, and there's no particular magic number, but it will finally hit everyone even before, perhaps, that you ever have that so-called moment of awakening or enlightenment, that period. But before then, a person who can hold this, who was born to do it, born to fly, if you can hold it for some length of time, then it will strike you something along these lines that if I never experience enlightenment, I'll take this. Because it alone held long enough for whatever's long enough for you. That held long enough eradicates all notions that you're ill. All ideas of problems in life are absolutely gone. There's no discussion. There's no attempting to rationalize problems. There's no talking to yourself about, well, now I see that problems perhaps have another character. No. There are no problems. There are no questions. I'm not saying you got all the answers. But there are no questions. For the first time in your life, I can put it this way. I'll at least go this far, since it's still not a sales pitch that would make you an ordinary person get off their move, ask or send me a donation anyway. For the first time in your life, you know, or you have a brand new idea of what being satisfied is. In fact, everything else that you thought before then pales. I can't resist, I'm going to do it again. I've said, the closest people seem to come sometimes is after good sex. And for those of you that's well read enough, there's been throughout history little notes of that, not necessarily made by mystics. But throughout history, on every side of this planet, has been little notes popping up that just anybody, a warrior, a farmer. Well, it's usually somebody, of course, in literature that we even have records, but we'll make some note that, like, it just begins to strike me that it seems like the only time that I actually feel like I'm sane or that I'm actually a human and belong on this planet is right after a real good screw. And they'll put question marks or exclamation marks like, what does it all mean? And they go on about their business. I shouldn't probably say that because then somebody ordinary might try and compare that to the state, but something. It seems like something in life, something in local conditions, almost requires me every time I say about being totally satisfied and that just being able to be conscious in the moment for an extended period of time. Forget being enlightened or awakened, but just that is a singular, a whole new feeling of satisfaction. Now, any decent speaker on the subject would leave it at that because that says what it is. But as I said, it seems to be some sort of embedded motivation to engage in full truth in public speaking and to throw in that piece about sex. I don't know what makes me do it, but it's irresistible. So if it misleads you or if it doesn't make any sense or if it makes you go off into strange orbits of thought, please disregard it and put it down as a personal peccadillo. If you have any intelligence, please do not do that. The moment of being able to be conscious in the moment expanded long enough for whatever it takes to you. And I'm not speaking of hours. I'm not even speaking necessarily of minutes, as I said. But once all the attempts, and if you do keep it up, it seems inevitable. I know of no exception to this, that they accumulate, that they're not wasted, although it may take you years and years and years, that one day they all seem to come together. And there you are, and you can be conscious in the moment. Thought stops. All the traffic going through you that you think of as being consciousness, it all idles, it just sits there. And then everything else I described is true. But what covers is to say for the first time in your life, you are absolutely satisfied. For the first time in your life, you are not dissatisfied. For the first time in your life, you do not feel like there's something funny going on. There's something being hidden from me. I mean, your consciousness, your face, your mental outlook, at that moment, you feel like a little baby's nude bottom that you stuck out a window of a house. Again, I don't know whether you see that, but it's like this little fresh pink little baby's rump that is just stuck out of a window of a house. That's like a mind that is conscious in the moment for a certain length of time. I see that, I guess, helped. Either that or it looked extremely silly, but it's like, it is a feeling of just, for the first time, of being undissatisfied. There is no feeling, again, there's no vanity, you don't even think about, well, now I know it all. Because what I'm describing now, I don't mean to be technical because there's really no technicals to this, but it is not really the same thing as that particular state that's been called awakening and liberation, all that. It's not actually that state. It's not so much a gaining of new knowledge. It's right then, it's you you realize that the nervous system in man has another state in which it can be. You're still conscious, that's no doubt. And as you can fill in for yourself, you're actually more conscious. But it is consciousness of just a totally different variety. There is no feeling of anything being hidden. To get to the practicality, men live. There's always a, quote, danger in the way I'm about to put it, that is the danger that ordinary people who might be passingly interested in listening such as this, they will immediately then jump into whatever is already the psychological stew in the traffic that's being run through their minds, and so we'll just run that danger because it's not going to hurt anyone. Man lives in a state in which he is hidden from himself. And those, as I said, of psychological bent will immediately go, well, now, all you're talking about is that we all have the large part of our lives are dictated by subconscious memories, desires, motivations. Now, that's why I spent the time in the beginning. I know it seems to fit. That is what they've done. A religious person could hear this and say, if I say, well, a large part of a man lives in such a way that he's hidden from himself, then a Christian or anybody else, or a Christian could say, well, all you're describing is a person living in sin. You're talking about a man who has not been reborn, a man who has not redeemed himself before God. And so, yes, he's a mystery to himself because of the original sin, and he is living in the shadows. He is living. Of course, then, if they were Christians of a Neoplatonic bent, they could bring in Plato and that our lives are simply shadows on a cave wall. That is not what it is. Those are all metaphors, symbolisms to compensate for looking directly at it, which is simply the nature of the way man is constructed. Now, what I'm trying to get you to see is a simple fact. Forget allegories, forget shadows, forget evil spirits, forget a subconscious mind. For a man who understands anything, for a man who's going to change, for a man who is still a tadpole, I can dismiss it, I can cover it simply and just say the idea of a subconscious mind is imagination. It's imagination in the same way that God is imagination, if you understand it. I'm not saying that people are stupid to believe in God or the subconscious, but it is a looking off from what the question was, what the problem is, which those of you getting really sharp, all I'm describing is your normal state of consciousness. It's a looking off somewhere and go, oh, and somebody gets the idea, well, wait a minute, I know what the problem is, but I know why we feel this way. It's God. Or I know why, wait a minute, I can answer your question. Your problem, what you're describing, that you find fault with, the problem is that's being caused by subconscious memories in you. And if you look off at that, why not? There's nothing else to see on the horizon. Of course, the thing is, as long as you look off, there's never anything particular to see. When you look off from you, everything, in a sense, is a mirage. It's like you're on a desert, and you understand what a mirage is. You look out, but a mirage, they're all fungible. It can be one thing, it can be God, or it can be the subconscious. We all know that any religious person or any scientific, psychologically inclined person who is not particularly religious, both of them would find fault with it. They would both say, well, that's not true. You're being insulting to us, from whichever camp they took. But they're both the same thing. At any rate, I was trying to get you to look past all metaphors. There's nowhere else to look off. It's simply look at your life. It's not theoretical. It's not me trying to prove something. Look at your life and you can feel it. It's not just sitting down looking back through a scrapbook. You can begin to feel it. You are living hidden from yourself. Now, there is no immediate description, or there's no immediate answer for man to say, well, what am I? If you say that I'm living a life and I'm hidden from myself, and what am I? Well, that's not my business, even if I knew, which is no big deal. But that's not it. What if somebody did know? What good does that do you anyway? And if somebody knew, they'd damn sure be trying to charge you to tell you, which they do, read priests and psychiatrists. And the thing is, if you go there and say, well, what is it hidden from me? And they go, well, I'll be glad to tell you for $100 an hour for a donation. And you find it to be a bargain. You find it satisfactory that you looked off. And they held it up and said, well, here it is. And they keep holding up one until you go, well, that ain't bad. They go, you like that one. And so they put down their other Mirages and other cards, and they let you go with that. If you can go with that, then go with that. But there is nowhere to look away from you to see the source or to see the reality yourself that you are living a hidden life. Remember, it is not for any reason. If you look for a reason, if you look for the source of the Nile, you'll never find the source of the Nile, because there is no source of the Nile. What you keep finding is more and more tributaries. Oh, I'm getting close, I'm getting close. Well, here's a new one, here's a new one. There is no source. There is no reason that you're hidden from you. There's no reason you're living a life in a true sense that's a self-deception. It's not from psychological causes. It's not from any cause other than the fact that you're an incomplete work. There is what's hidden. There is the missing part. I remind you again. But back to more immediate, potentially practical aspects of it. Everything that you cannot explain about your life is explained by the fact that you are living in self-deception. One more time, I'll point out that ordinary people, the religious and the psychologically proclived, could immediately jump on that and go, well, you got nothing new. That's what we've been saying. Psychologists say that. They say, well, that's exactly what we're saying, is you are doing things for reasons you don't understand. Okay. Except I repeat to you, we're back to the same distinction. When I say there are no reasons, and they say, well, there's got to be reasons. There's a reason for everything. The relationship between that attitude that there's got to be reasons for everything and me saying that there are no reasons is the same as the relationship or the distinction I tried to draw to you between the two facts that if you think you're a finished work, all you can do is treat yourself and you cannot change. The only way you can change is to see that man is incomplete. And when that happens, you realize there is no source for anything in an incomplete piece of work. The source is being alive. But the source of every complaint you have. Now remember, we're not talking about psychological because there is no source, there is no cause of it in your lifetime, in any man's lifetime. But every problem, every complaint that you have about you is caused, this is just one description, is caused by, arises from you living a life of self-deception. That is not at all difficult to see. It's just irrelevant, and it takes the teeniest bit of effort, which most people won't do. The prescription is too harsh. The diagnosis is too blunt. Here it is. We'll assume that you've got all the makings of a sane, ordinary person. And then then look at all the complaints you have in life. And they are generally based upon, even though you might start out that your major complaints, they're all going to have an emotional basis. We're not talking about illness. When I talk about feelings, I'm talking about emotional feelings. All of a person's complaints, their major complaints, if you start saying, well, tell me what they are. They all have an emotional basis that came, and the basis will always be something that somebody did to me, but I am still suffering over it. In other words, I am unhappy, I'm dissatisfied. And I can point out some of the reasons why. All right, whatever it is, and it can get less in memory, it can get less substantial and just be an abstract feeling of, I'm not happy and I've got all kinds of annoyances and things, I'm not even sure why, but all sorts of things annoy me now. And I don't know the reason, so I admit they're sort of hidden from me. After that, a person's behavior, somewhere all through their life, you don't have to necessarily go back and track it, but what I'm trying to take it one step further now, it's not just the feeling that you've been mistreated and you've suffered over it, then it has caused you to do things that cause you additional suffering. That is, my life has not been lived profitably. Oh, I've gotten somewhere and I get promotions, I got a nice house, but my life, as far as me evolving, as far as me growing, it has been a continual series of self-inflicted gunshots. I have been poisoned, in a sense, by my own hand. Now, we're not talking about ordinary people. They would still go along with this, but they would see it as being neurotic behavior verging on psychotic behavior. Now, I'm talking to you people. You still look upon your life, and if you haven't done anything drastically harmful to yourself lately, you see your sense of your less than admirable position is based upon a series, and you could probably name some of them, of events in which you acted in ways that are just astounding. Now, that you think, why did I do that? Why did I say that to him or her? Why did I act that way? From anything approaching an attempted objective view of oneself, to investigate, how can you explain doing anything that you consider, not me, but that you consider after the fact, detrimental? Why would you insult a man who was about ready to hire you? God knows why. Why, just because you imagine that your wife was running around on you, why did you throw an axe at her, or throw her out of the house? Why did you leave? You know, and you can say things, well, I was drinking, I got too upset. You can say whatever you want to. There is only one reason for a sane person. Well, let me disregard. You're going to have to, I assume you can do it, you disregard any outside drugs besides your own neurotransmitters. So we'll discount that you were drunk or drugged. You just look back and you say, well, I got carried away, acted in the throes of passion, I did things. And you will say this, to yourself at least, I simply do not know why. It's easy to know why. Remember, it's not a cause, but to know why is that you were operating hidden from yourself. How else can you explain it? You are not there. And even ordinary people will go along to that. They take it probably mostly as a metaphor. But simply a person just got through insulting their boyfriend or girlfriend, husband or wife, over something. I mean, to the point that they may split up. And they walk away. And they go over their initial passion. And somebody goes up to them and says, do you realize, you know, she left. She got in the car with somebody else. And she turned to me when she left. She said she didn't ever want to see you again. In a few minutes, you see it over a person's face. I'm just trying to figure out something that happens to most people in your life. I'm sure you can find what you think are other examples. But you think, my God. And somebody can say, why did you do that? And truthfully, as sincere as a man can be, including you people, you think, I do not know. It's inexplicable. I don't know why I did it. It is not inexplicable. You were not there. You did not know what you were doing. And as I started to say, even ordinary people go, yeah, that's true. I didn't know what I was doing. But they look at it as being an exceptional situation. They look at it as being an anomalous occurrence in their life, whereas if you get as good as some of you people should be getting, it's not an anomaly. That's your normal state. That was just a sudden outburst. But the question is simply this. Ask yourself, I'll try to pick it up next time, but simply ask yourself on a quite cold-blooded, objective attempt. You can always attempt the objective view. Why would a sane person, ask yourself, that under most conditions you're extremely sane, you right now could even be more sane than the average person on this planet. You could be a bit more conscious most of the time than most people. Certainly you've got more suspicions, if not more understanding about the nature of man in life. And so then you look, and it doesn't have to be something that happened 20 years ago. Every day almost, you'll do little things. Well, on a fairly regular basis. It doesn't have to be throwing an axe at your wife or insulting your boss and getting fired, but you do things continually that you suffer over, or that you think, in words along this, or you feel, and of course it will trigger you thinking some way about it, is why in the hell did I do that? And it's very often that you no longer by now say, why did I do it? You go, I have got to stop that. How many times have I said I will not let my temper do things like that? Look at it objectively. How can you explain that something that 5 minutes later is clearly, without any doubt, you see that you should not have done that for your reasons? It hurt you. Let's just say it was talk. I did it again. And there is no way that you can look at it and come to any conclusion other than that harmed me, and I know it did. And I have done it before and knew it did and decided not to. How can you explain engaging in a continual lifetime of acts that you know are detrimental to you? There is only one explanation, unless you're religious or believe in the subconscious. There's only one explanation. The you that knows that is not the you that did it, because that was not you. That doesn't mean that the you now is you, but you have got to see that there is a whole life, and it's not subconscious, it's not demon-driven, that you live day by day, moment to moment. You live here, and you look in the mirror, you say you, people recognize you, you know it's you. And yet you make a mistake to say that that is totally you. It is a reflection of you. It is, to stretch out the cave and the shadows, I put another way to you the other night, it is not really you. It is standing in the bright sun or the campfire, but it's standing before the bright object of the potential you. That if you're a tadpole and you know it, then what you're seeing, well, everybody's seeing a shadow of themselves, but if you know that you're a tadpole, then the shadow you see, you know is not you. Because you recognize that's the outline, that's a shadow of a tadpole. That's not a shadow of a frog. The explanation I'll leave, we're out, of all inexplicable behavior, all the things that a person does that causes them problems, there is only one objective view of it initially, and that is not me that did that. And one more time, that does not imply, that does not take into account ordinary notions of a subconscious mind, evil influences, an out of control state of awareness. You know it doesn't. When you were there doing that, that was you. Look at the passion. By God, get out of here. I never want to see you again. I ain't got to put up. You was as passionate as you was, and somebody said, hey, won't you calm down? I don't need to calm down. Hey, man, come on. Hey, I know exactly what I'm doing. In fact, this is very common. I am now more clear-headed than ever. Right now, I know more than ever. Boy, I'm sick of that bitch. Get out of here. I know exactly. And 5 minutes later, 2 minutes later, they go, why did I do that?